When we hear about caste issues, people often want to silence them. We talk about Kashmir, we talk about farmers, we talk about religious minorities, but caste is rarely given the same attention. And when it is given, there is a collective effort to ensure it doesn't dominate their own narrative. Yet, caste is not just another issue, it is the backdrop to every problem in India, especially the poverty in India. Until caste becomes a central part of our conversation, it will remain the unspoken foundation of our inequality. Every day, 3 Dalit women were raped in India, 2 Dalits are murdered, and 5 Dalit houses are burned. That's not a statistic. It's a horrifying reality. How can we say caste doesn't matter anymore when such atrocities continue? These are not isolated incidents. They are a systematic reminder of how caste operates, how it suppresses, and how it brutalizes. Their deaths are a stark reminder that caste is not a relic of the past. It's a living, breathing monster that continues to devour the most vulnerable among us. This is not just about ending caste discrimination, it's about reclaiming our humanity. So let's see the clear picture to break these invisible chains together. Because when one of us rises, we all rise. What if I told you that you could only do a particular job for the rest of your life? And what if I added that your children too would be bound to do the same job without any choice forever? Imagine your livelihood depending entirely on someone else's wealth, whether or not you get to eat, whether or not you fairly survive, all based on their whims. Would you accept such a life? Of course not. You would stand up, you would resist, maybe even fight back, because life is about choices, life is about freedom, and life is about dignity. But here is the harsh reality. This is not just a hypothetical. This has been the lived experience of millions of people in India for centuries, all because of something called caste. You might think, caste, isn't that a thing of the past? We are a modern, progressive society now. You might even say, in my family, we don't believe in caste discrimination. We are liberal, we are educated, we treat everyone equally. We may say so. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the architect of our constitution, he had to sit outside the classroom as a child, far from his classmates, because he was a Dalit. You would think this is an ancient history, but even today, in many parts of India, children from marginalized caste are made to sit at the back of classrooms. The form of untouchability may have changed, but its spirit is very much alive. According to the National Crime Reports Bureau, over 40,000 cases of violence and atrocities against Dalits and Adivasis are reported every year. That is over 100 incidents every single day. And these are just the reported ones. Imagine how many go unrecorded. Every day, these are not just numbers. They represent lives destroyed, families shattered, and dreams crushed. Caste discrimination is not confined to rural areas or small villages. It thrives in cities too, in a subtle and overt ways. There is Rohit Vemula's story, a bright young PhD scholar who was driven to take his own life because of the relentless caste-based discrimination he faced in higher education. His death was a stark reminder of the systematic exclusion and dehumanization that Dalits and marginalized communities endure even in spaces meant to uplift and educate. Dalits and Adivasis make up about 25% of India's population. Yet their representation in media, corporate leadership, academia, and governance is abysmally low. This is not an accident. It's a result of deliberate exclusion over generations. Even today, scholarships for Dalit students are delayed and systematic barriers prevent them from accessing quality education and opportunity. They are the backbone of our labor force, keeping our streets clean, our homes functioning, and our economy running. Yet they are treated as invisible, their contributions undervalued, their dignity denied. Caste is not a relic of the past. Caste is not a relic of the past. It's a living, it's a breathing reality that shapes the lives of millions. And if you think caste doesn't affect you, it's only because you sit in a position of privilege. It's a time to confront this uncomfortable truth, to unlearn the biases ingrained in us, and to work toward an India where caste is not a chain, but a chapter we have closed forever. Only then we truly call ourselves a modern, progressive nation. In India, the top 1% of the population holds 60% of the wealth. The top 10 votes 80% of the wealth. What is left for the remaining 90%? A mere 20% of the resources. And within this hierarchy, caste decides who gets what. Caste is not just about discrimination. It's about privilege too. It's about the systematic advantages enjoyed by dominant castes, built on the backs of those they oppress. Whether it is in education, it is in employment, or access to resources, caste determines who climbs the ladder and who gets crushed under its weight. And yet, the dominant castes have always found ways to align themselves with power. Be it under the Mughals, be it under the British, or in modern capitalist India, Brahmins have historically served as advisors, administrators, and enforcers of oppressive systems. They have mastered the art of adapting to new regimes while preserving their supremacy. The reality we face today, marked by a series of recent shocking incidents of anti-Dalit violence, is not just a story of injustice, but a call to action for every one of us. These incidents are not confined to one region or one group. They span different states in India. The victims are of all ages, from young children to the elderly, proving that the poison of caste hatred spares no one. Each act of violence, whether it is physical assault, psychological torture, or social exclusion, it tells a tale of systematic oppression that continues to thrive in our society. Imagine the fear of a Dalit woman poisoned to death simply because she dared to marry someone from another caste. Picture an elderly man being beaten for seeking shelter from rain, a basic human act, denied because of this caste. Envision a minor girl, already a victim of rape, being further traumatized, and then there is the horrifying image of a Dalit boy being forced to drink urine as punishment. These are not just stories, they are realities that reflect the depth of caste-based cruelty. Caste-based privilege is not sustainable. It breeds resentment, fuels inequality, and stifles progress. If we truly want an India where everyone has a fair chance, we must confront the caste head-on. We must address the privileges that come with it and dismantle the systems that uphold it. This is not just a Dalit issue or an Adivasi issue, it's an Indian issue. Because until we are all free from the chains of caste, none of us are truly free. Did you know that 60.5% of Dalit kids suffer from anemia, often leading to death? This is not just a statistic, it's a grim reality of neglect and systematic discrimination. Compare this with the health outcomes of the so-called upper caste and you will see the glaring disparity. It's not just about biology or geography, it's about caste-based denial of resources and care. Education, a supposed equalizer, paints an even grimmer picture. Dalit parents, often landless and laborers, they sacrifice the little they have to send their children to school. At the primary level, 88% of Dalit children are enrolled, but as they move up, the numbers drop drastically to 66% in secondary school and a dismal 11% in higher education. Out of these, less than 5% graduate. Where do the rest go? Many are forced to drop out due to poverty, discrimination, and the sheer mental toll of being constantly reminded that they don't belong. They are labeled as quota candidates, their merit questioned, and their aspirations crushed under the weight of prejudice. Even in personal relationships, caste rears its ugly head. Intercaste marriages, particularly those involving Dalit, they are met with resistance, met with violence and even death. The blood of a Dalit considered impure, unworthy of mixing with the so-called pure bloodline. The idea of love and equality is crushed under the weight of caste-based hate. This is not just a social issue, it's a human tragedy. Violence against Dalit is not a relic of the past. It's a daily occurrence. Every day, 3 Dalit women are raped, 2 Dalits are murdered, and 5 Dalit houses are burned. These are not just numbers. They are lives destroyed by a society that refuses to accept Dalits as equals. The irony is that Dalits, despite being the most oppressed, they are often expected to prove their nationalism and loyalty to the nation. They are branded as anti-national for demanding their rights, for speaking out against injustice. Their voices are silenced, their struggles dismissed, and their identities erased. Religion, land ownership, and education, each of these domains is weaponized to perpetuate caste. The so-called upper caste, they have used religion to justify their dominance, the land to consolidate their power, and education to exclude others. The narrative of caste is not just one of oppression, it is also one of resistance. Dalits have fought back through movements, literature, and personal acts of defense. But the road is long, and the challenges are immense. The question is, how long will it take for society to see Dalits as equals, not as tokens, not as statistics, but as fellow human beings? The caste system is a stain on our collective conscience. It is a reminder that even in the 21st century, we have a long way to go to achieve true equality. The time to act is now. Through education, through awareness, and through a collective commitment to dismantle this oppressive system. Because until caste is annihilated, there can be no real progress for India. Let's see caste not as a historical artifact, but as something alive, breathing, and shaping our lives every day. Many of us like to pretend caste doesn't matter anymore. We hear things like it's changing, or we are all equal now. But is it? Is equality really the ground we stand on? And what happens to these landless Dalits? They migrate to cities in search of work, often with no connections, no safety nets, and no promises. They arrive at railway stations with nothing but hope, and that hope often turns into despair. Many end up on the streets begging for survival, becoming invisible in a society that thrives on looking away. And then there is the narrative that Dalits have made it. See these Dalits who become a CEO or the Dalit who entered politics. But these are exceptions. not the rule. Let's not confuse isolated victories with the systematic change. The Dalit woman raped every day, the Dalit man who can't enter a temple, the Dalit child denied quality education. We cannot talk about poverty, unemployment, or even religion in India without addressing caste. It is the foundation of every issue we face. Yet, instead of confronting it, we trivialize it. We treat it like a side note when it should be the headline. Let's not be fooled by token gestures or feel-good conversations. Structural change requires dismantling the system that perpetuates caste. It's not enough to say caste is bad. We need to ask who benefits from caste, who is defining it, and who is being crushed by it. It's time to challenge the privilege that disguises itself as tradition. It's a time to give every Indian, not just a select few, the chance to dream, to achieve and to live with dignity. Because until caste is annihilated, none of us can truly claim to be free. Because caste in India is not just a system, it is a reality that has permeated every aspect of our lives for centuries. It's like an invisible web threading through our relationships, our religion, our politics, and even our economy. We may claim to be modern, we may claim to be educated, we may claim to be progressive, but caste clings to us like a shadow we can't shake off. It predates every religion in India and has stubbornly survived every attempt to erase it. Sikhism, Islam, Christianity, all religions that promised equality were also infiltrated by caste. It is as if this system has an innate ability to adapt, ensuring its survival. Let's get real. The issue is not about blaming others. It's not about pointing fingers at Brahmins, Dalits, or anyone else. It's about recognizing the monster among us and within us. Even today, families hesitate to let their children marry outside their caste. It's easy to say, oh, I don't believe in caste. But actions often tell a different story. Conversations about caste begin at home, and the courage to dismantle it also starts there. If we can't question caste comments, if we can't question casteist comments at the dinner table, how can we hope to challenge them in society? Some parents boast, I raised my child without caste prejudice. Well, congratulations, but is that enough? Children step into colleges and workplaces where caste becomes a part of their reality. Are they prepared to face it? Ignoring caste doesn't make it disappear. It only makes it stronger because silence is its most potent ally. We need to take a page from the history of progressive individuals who challenged their privileges. Many Brahmins supported Dr. Ambedkar's movement, opposing their own community's practices. They fought not just for Dalits, but for the dignity of humanity itself. Their courage was not about tokenism. It was about taking a stand, starting within their own homes and communities. If we lack the guts to confront our own families, our so-called activism becomes just empty talk, a sentimental exercise in utility. Imagine the irony. Skillful, hard-working individuals being pushed into failure by the weight of their caste. Capitalism, instead of being an escape, capitalism has often reinforced caste hierarchies. Contracts, middlemen, and exploitative systems, they have existed in India long before modern capitalism. Landowners used to exploit peasants through intermediaries. Now we call it contractual labor. The names may have changed, but the system remains the same, designed to extract the maximum labor while denying dignity to the worker. Born into a system, that denies them dignity, opportunity, and respect. They are trapped in a hierarchy so rigid that it has survived centuries. They clean our streets, they bury our dead, and they perform the dirtiest, most dehumanizing jobs. And yet, society looks at them not with gratitude, but with disgust. Let me tell you about manual scavengers. Men and women forced to clean human excreta with the bare hands. We call ourselves a modern nation, and yet we allow this shameful practice to persist. These individuals risk their lives daily, but what do they get in return? Nothing but humiliation and neglect. Now, let's talk about Dalit women. They carry the double burden of caste and gender discrimination. Do you know that violence, especially sexual violence, is often used as a weapon to silence and humiliate entire Dalit communities? When a Dalit woman is attacked, it's not just about her. It's about sending a message to her entire caste. Stay in your place. But amidst all this darkness, there is hope. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, he gave India its constitution, showed us the way. He urged us to educate, organize, and agitate. He didn't just challenge the caste system, he demolished its moral foundation. Can we pause for a moment and reflect on the stories we carry? Stories of children forced to normalize their oppression, stories of families living in fear, and stories of untold resilience. These are not just stories of individuals. They are the reality of Dalits in India. Millions of lives bound by invisible chains of caste system, so entrenched that even the youngest of hearts are burdened by it. Dalits have fought back with courage, challenging centuries of oppression. From the first civil rights movements for water to breaking barriers in education and employment, still the struggle continues. Each act of resistance, however small, each act of resistance is a declaration of humanity, a refusal to be defined by caste. But the responsibility is not just theirs, it's ours, yours, and everyone's. To dismantle caste is to dismantle its carrier. The family system that perpetuates it, the social norms that normalize it, and the silence that sustain it. It's a time to unlearn the prejudice ingrained in us, to challenge the privileges we often fail to acknowledge. It's a time to listen. It's a time to amplify the voices of those silenced for far too long. Dalits are not asking for pity. They are demanding equality. They are not seeking handouts. They are reclaiming their rights. This is not their fight alone. It's a fight for the soul of India. Will we continue to avert our gaze, or will we stand with them, breaking the chains of caste for good? Baba Saheb Ambedkar warned us about this long ago. He said, the colonial masses may leave, but the native masses will remain. And here we are, decades later, still grappling with the same old inequality. His vision of a society based on equality was not just about legal reforms. It was about a revolution of the mind and at the heart. He found the inspiration in Buddhism not as a religion, but as a philosophy of social equality. Baba Saheb Ambedkar's Buddha was not a passive figure. He was a revolutionary. He was walking the streets, challenging the intellectual elite and advocating for a society free from oppression. But caste is not just an Indian problem. It exists in different forms across the world, whether in Africa, Latin America, or even among South Asian communities abroad. We must realize that remaining silent makes us complicit. Whether you are in India, Canada, or in United States, caste and its modern avatars, racism, classism, or sexism, they demand that we speak out. Institutions must ask tough questions. How many Dalit or Adivasi students are being admitted? How many voices from marginalized communities are being heard? If we continue to exclude these voices, we are perpetuating the very system we claim to oppose. And let's not forget intersectionality. The struggle against caste is not just about one group. It's about everyone who faces oppression. Dalits, Adivasis, women, all of their struggles are interconnected. If we fight together as allies, we can create a movement that transcends barriers and dismantle oppression at its roots. This is not just about Dalit lives. It's about all lives that have been crushed under the weight of discrimination and injustice. And it's a fight we all must join. Not tomorrow, not some other day, but it's today. Caste matters have always been deeply rooted in the social and political fabric of India, shaping power dynamics, access to resources, and the very idea of belonging. Historically, the dominant castes have consistently maintained their hegemony by controlling not just land and resources, but also the social structures that define who belongs where. This started during colonial time when certain castes were granted land, and it continued post-independence. Their aim was simple: to suppress the rise of Ambedkarite consciousness, a force that sought to dismantle oppressive structures and empower the oppressed. Every village had a caste that dominated, and these groups were pulled into the folds of regional and national politics. This created a system where land owners translated into political clout, and political clout reinforced social dominance. Over time, many of these dominant castes become the face of regional parties. What can we do about caste discrimination? To begin with, we must confront our own biases. Caste is not just someone else's issue, it's embedded in our society and often in our own actions. It lurks in the jokes we laugh at, the choices we make when it comes to friendship or marriages, and the stereotypes we unconsciously accept. Acknowledging this is the first step towards change. Next, we must find the courage to speak out. Silence is not neutral, it is a form of complicity. When we hear a discriminatory comment at work, in our social circle, or even at home, we must challenge it. When we see unfair practices in schools, workplaces, or communities, we must question them. Change begins when we refuse to look the other way. Education and empowerment are equally vital. We must strive to create opportunities for those who have been historically denied them. Supporting initiatives that provide education, skill building, and economic opportunities to marginalized communities, they can help break the cycle of discrimination. It is our collective responsibility to ensure no child is held back because of their caste. Above all, we need to reimagine what kind of society we want to live in. Picture a world where the only measures of worth are merit and character, not the circumstances of one's birth. A world where every person, irrespective of caste, gender, or religion, is free to dream without fear or barrier and to live a life of dignity. The future is possible, but only if we make the efforts today. Let's take a stand, not just for others, but for the soul of our society. Thank you.